Hey there, wrestling fans. Dan Lovranski here for Live Audio Wrestling and the Fight Network. And today I get to chat with a true wrestling legend. This man, one of my favorite stars from the 80s, very entertaining guy, and always great to talk to him. He's coming up here to Ontario, actually, in April, and he's doing the Whirlwind $1 Million Tour. Now, if it's called the $1 Million Tour, you probably have a pretty good idea who I'm talking to. Yes, that's right. It's the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, sitting down with us today. And Mr. DiBiase, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm very good. Lots of stuff to talk about, and we will talk about the $1 Million Tour because this is really a cool concept. But I just wanted to talk about a couple other things first before we get into discussing the tour and why you're doing it and everything.
Sure.
And just a couple things I wanted to touch on because unfortunately over the past couple of weeks we've had passing of some real wrestling legends and a couple of guys I'm sure that you probably were familiar with. And I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on George the Animal Steele because again, like yourself in the 80s, a very, very, very unique character.
George the Animal Steele, George was a wonderful guy. I mean, one of the nicest people I think I've ever met. And, George obviously is somewhat older than me. And, what was funny about when George first started being a wrestler, he was a school teacher.
That's right.
And so in the summertime, he would go and wrestle. And initially, I think that they say he wore a mask.
He
so
did.
Nobody would recognize him.
Yeah, he did.
Then, of course, later, he becomes this guy. He goes out to the ring, like he's, doesn't have half a brain, and he's, chewing up turnbuckles, and then, people find out, that he's a school teacher. It just blows their mind. But, when George retired from the ring, he became, an agent for the WWF, and so he was the guy at a lot of the shows I went to later on, and he was the guy in charge.
Right.
And, I have a documentary that will soon be coming out as well, entitled The Price of Fame. And George was interviewed for my documentary, and he was one of the guys. It's part of my story. I came to a place where I personal failure in my life, caught in adultery. I had to confess this stuff to my wife. And I get on a plane and I fly to Europe, which was the last thing I wanted to do. And then I get a call, you better get your rear end home. And George was there. He was one of those guys that was there when this conflict in my life happened and witnessed it and made sure I got on a plane to get out of there. But then later heard me speak as a minister, as a Christian. And he said, he said it. He said, I was skeptical at first because of what I knew about Ted's past. He said, but it became glaringly obvious that he was for real. And he said it impacted his life as well. So I have very fond memories of George, and miss him. He's one of those guys that everybody, I can't find anybody that has anything against George.
Yes.
He's a great guy.
Yeah,
Great guy.
I interviewed him several times through the years, and yeah, I agree. Always got along great, always had great things to say. I'm curious, did the two of you ever work together in the ring at all?
I never did. I never wrestled with George. Never had the opportunity.
Interesting. One of the other ones too, and I'm not sure how much contact you would have had with him, perhaps maybe when you were younger, but that's also, we had the passing of Ivan Koloff just the day after George the Animal Steele.
Right.
And I wanted to see if you had any thoughts or memories of Ivan Koloff as well.
Well, I never had the opportunity to work or wrestle with Ivan. And now I'm very close friends with Nikita.
Right.
And Nikita and he were partners. And of course, Ivan was, quite a bit older than Nick. But, again, we share the same faith. We're both strong Christians. And that's where, it's after Ivan had become a Christian and that I ever even met him, during my wrestling career. And he was wrestling. I just never, he was pretty much, he wrestled for the Crockett's,
Right.
That area, and I just never went there. That's one of the territories I never went to. so we didn't actually meet each other till later. And but again, just one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet.
Mm-hmm. And finally, one other one as well. And this one, it's a somewhat more of a controversial one because while he was a huge star in the 80s, there's a black mark on his career, and that's Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And I just wanted to see, again, if you had any memories of working with Jimmy Snuka.
I only worked with Jimmy a couple of times, but I know this, that the guy I knew, the guy that I met, was probably, he was never in a bad mood, and it was probably, again, one of the sweetest guys, on a consistent basis that I ever met. Now, I had heard, everybody, like I think everybody had heard the story that there was this thing that happened in his past, and nobody ever knew for sure, and it was just kind of left at that. But if he's guilty, then he's guilty. But you know what? As a Christian, I'm one of those who believes in forgiveness. Like I tell people all the time, I said we're supposed to forgive as we've been forgiven. He was probably a different person then, if in fact, because it's not the guy I knew. And I would say 99% of the wrestlers you would talk to would say the same thing I just said.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting when someone like Snuka, or an extreme example like Chris Benoit, where you had a guy that had an amazing wrestling career, but then just one incident kind of just negates the whole thing.
Well, yeah, and again, Chris Benoit. Everybody was in shock when that happened because it was just, in reality, it was so out of character for who he was as a person,
mm-hmm.
That all of us knew. Here's a guy that he would bend over backwards to help you. He was one of the nicest guys. And of course, I heard some stories later, like they talked about, I guess when examining his brain,
right.
They said that his brain was, like putty.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right. Obviously there's something deeply wrong. And, so I don't know. Again, another guy that everybody loved. And just, obviously, the whole wrestling world was in shock when that one happened. Yeah. I still remember that day.
Yeah.
We shut down a show we were supposed to do because of it.
Oh wow! Yeah, there was. It's quite a terrible incident, and it's always tough to figure out where do these guys go in history. How do we acknowledge them when they have these black marks on their careers? Right? It's a very touchy situation.
It is, and again, based on the way I heard the story and how it all, his wife, like when they examined the whole thing, his wife died. Then it was 24 hours later that his son died, and again another almost 24 hours were before he took his own life. And I don't know, I know that he and his wife, their child was a special needs child, mm-hmm. and those children need a lot of attention. And I guess there was always some concern about that. And also knew that his wife was not, it's like she wasn't one of those, she wasn't a wallflower. So in other words, she stood up for what she believed too.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the speculation was a big argument, and just he exploded. And it was like, they say you can have like what they call temporary insanity, where you just go berserk, and all of a sudden you snap out of it, and then there he's looking at his wife, and she's dead. And so 24 hours he's contemplating what's going to happen to my son, where's he going to go? He's going to grow up and realize that his father was killed his mother, and everybody speculates that as like, in his eyes he saw it as a mercy. Killing.
Right.
And then it took another 24 hours for him to, I guess, get the courage to take his own life.
Yeah.
It's just sad. It's just really sad.
Yeah, it really.
There's just no other way to look at it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So let's move on and get into some more cheery stuff here, and the $1 million tour. you're going to do this. It's a week here up in Ontario. Starts Friday, April the 7th in St. Catharines and ends on Friday, April the 14th in Hamilton. How did this come about, Ted?
Well, I was approached by Jan Murphy, and Jan was running. He asked if I would come up and make an appearance at an independent wrestling show that was being done to raise money for a charity, and so I said, sure. I'm an ordained minister. I travel and speak in churches. I've been all over Canada, and I'm all about helping charities. And so I did that. And he said, if you want to stay an extra day, because I was coming to take care of this charity, and so I didn't take much for it. And they we'll kind of help you out, make a few extra bucks. And have you ever done one of these things? And he mentioned Jake Roberts and Mick Foley,
right?
And JR. And I go, you know what? Jake's been telling me that I should do this, and so I said, oh, you know what? Let's try it. And you know what? I've known Jake all his life. Ever since he's been in the business, and I was there with him through a lot of his story.
Right.
And so, nobody was happier to see the guy kick out and make a turnaround than I was. But he's always been kind of a funny guy, always. And Mick Foley, even his wrestling characters at times were, could be very comical.
Right.
And so, but I never saw myself as a comedian. And he says, it's not about being a comedian. And when you live the wrestling life, there's, and I was in it actively for 20 years and in it all together for 25. And there's just so many funny things that happen. There's just so many stories that you can tell that people just get the biggest kick out of. And fans, that's the one thing about fans. They want that. They want to be able to see behind the curtain. They
Yes.
want to say, what really went on. And so that's the other thing about these events where I'm not just telling stories. I'm giving the fans the opportunity to ask me any questions they want and to answer those questions. And I found as we did this, fans would ask me a question, and I'd answer their question, but at the same time, it would make me remember another story.
Yeah, right. Of course.
And it was great. As well as, I think everybody gets an opportunity to get an autograph and take a picture with me. And so, it's a little more intimate time. And, the first one went off well. And I said, man, I like that. I was almost surprised, I guess. And we had a real good turnout. And so Jan said, well, hey, you know what? Let's see if we can. He said, if we could hook this thing up, you want to do it? And I said, absolutely. And so I think the timing's great too, because this is going to happen. I'm going to basically leave WrestleMania in Orlando, Florida, and 2 days later or 3 days later, fly to Canada to start this thing.
Right.
And so it'll be right on the heels of WrestleMania, and we're going to have some fun. And I understand that Jan's also told me that there's 3 or 4 other communities that want the show that we just not, so I'm looking now to, okay, we're going to do this and then come back again. So, who knows?
Yeah. Well, this is quite the whirlwind tour, Ted. You're basically doing a show every night for an entire week.
Yeah, well, it's what it's reminiscent of is being back on the road.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And is that part of why you like to do these too, Ted? Because you're an entertainer. You always liked being out in front of the crowds. Is this part of kind of trying to get part of that again as well?
Well, I've always liked, and I've always said that wrestling fans are some of the greatest fans in the world because they're so loyal. It's once they're your fan, they're a fan. And, like when I go to autograph signings at, like, say, a Comic-Con where I'm there maybe, not for just 2 hours and out the door, where I'm there for like a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the time I'm sitting, I'm the guest of a vendor or something, and like Jimmy Hart and I were the guest of a vendor at the New York Comic Con, and we were there for like 4 days, and for several hours a day, and it's more interactive. You have the time to, again, talk to the fans and answer their questions, and and get to know them, and I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, you were part of that '80s. Wrestling in the '80s, it was so popular. There were so many unique characters. A lot of you guys all came onto your own in that time period, and I just think so many of those people, they're older now. A lot of them are in positions of power, running Comic Cons, running these type of events, and they want to bring you guys out so that the fans have a chance to go, wow, I talked to the $1 Million Man.
Well, and we love it too. It's a two-way street, and so I'm looking forward to it very, very, very much.
So,
and the other thing, people tell me, fans say that to me. They say, "You guys, this one particular, frame of time, like from the mid '80s to maybe the mid '90s,
right?
Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, me and Jake, and
Ricky
that
Steamboat,
the British Bulldogs, and
Art Foundation.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, they all, because I hear it all the time. You guys were the golden age, they say.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were the last great class of wrestling.
Right.
And again, I take it with a grain of salt. I love the business. I'm appreciative of Vince McMahon and all that he's done for the industry and for me. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now,
right,
if it weren't for what Vince had done for wrestling and done for me. The character he gave me was unique, and I'm fortunate.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you've done the Comic Cons and stuff like that, I'm always curious with particular wrestlers. Are there certain questions that always get asked of Ted DiBiase? Like, what's the main thing that people want to know from the $1 Million Man?
Well, this is funny. The question I get asked more than any other question is, when we were introducing the character the first couple of months,
mm-hmm.
and I was doing all of these vignettes.
Yep.
They all want to know if I really jilted that little boy dribbling the basketball. And I tell them, I say, I'm glad you asked the question, because no. I mean, here's the thing: if it was on television, it was rehearsed. I mean, now matches weren't rehearsed, but those things that we did, those little segments, like Brother Love and the Piper's Pit,
right?
Those things, not all of them, but some of them were rehearsed. But now with this thing, these were all rehearsed, and so this was rehearsed. It happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we were, I said, so what are we going to do tonight? Well, I said, what's Milwaukee famous for? And somebody said, beer and basketball. And I said, well, we can't do anything with beer, so let's do something with a basketball. And I believe it was Gorilla Monsoon. I said, let's get a kid out of the audience and do this deal. And, if he can dribble a basketball, and then you have him do it again. And, but now he's got to do it more times consecutively. And, and so the whole idea was that I offer him money, but I find a way to jilt him,
right,
to screw him out of it. And so when we rehearsed it, it was great. And of course, when we did it live, I had to be hardcore.
Yes.
I had to be, and so this kid was like 5, maybe 6 years old.
Right.
And so I think I told him, you dribble, let me see you do it 10 times. And he does. And I said, okay, if you do that again 15 times without missing, I got $500 for you. And I can tell you need the money, kid. and so he starts doing it, and the crowd is counting with him. 1, 2, 3. He gets to 14, and I just stuck my foot out and made the ball bounce off my foot. And whoops, you blew it, kid. And then I'm hardcore, so I have a deep voice, and I looked at him and I go, you're going to have to learn a very hard lesson of the young life. When you don't get the job done, you don't get the money. I mean, it scared him. crocodile tears. I mean, and he ran to his mother, and I mean, he couldn't have done it any better.
Wow.
And I got in the back, everybody's high fiving and going, yes, that was great. And I said, I'm glad you're all happy now. Can you please find an armored vehicle to get me out of the building?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Because those people want to kill me.
Yeah.
And I mean, more than any other question, that's the one I get.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
much so that the last action figure that the WWE put out on me, with the action figure, is a little toy gold briefcase.
Yeah.
And a basketball.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
It is. It's crazy.
My personal favorite was always the one at the swimming pool. I thought the one at the swimming pool was where you threw all the kids out of the pool and you and Virgil took over the pool. I thought that was just brilliant.
Lots of fun.
That's so funny. The other thing, too, I think that's kind of neat with the speaking tour is because, you've actually written 2 different autobiographies on your career, but
right.
But now I guess you can talk about even more than what was in those books.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going forward, I mean, I could. The first book I wrote was my story, but it centered on my faith and the spiritual journey in my life. And of course, the second book, that I did for the WWE,
right,
with Simon & Schuster, focuses on my career. But I also share at the end of that book, how I transitioned out of wrestling into the ministry work that I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's good because I get to interact with the fans.
Yeah,
and that's always great.
So I guess when they come to the show, you'll come out and you'll do a talk and tell some stories, I guess, and then you just open it up for questions.
Well, I mean, I don't know how each like usually they'll start off with like the folks will come up and if they want to buy autographed pictures and take pictures with you. I think they usually do that first for like, I don't know, an hour or so.
Okay.
Make sure everybody gets something, and I think when I did this, they had like an opening act, like a comedian, that did a little deal and then introduced me, and then I went and did my thing, and it was just and that the other thing is like I tell some stories, and for a while, and then I open it up to them, and as they ask me questions, a lot of times, I mean, it was just kind of interactive, where sometimes they'd ask me a question, and that would remind me of a story. So it worked really, really well, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's awesome. I think it's going to be quite cool. One thing I also wanted to ask about too, last night when I was getting ready for this interview, just doing some prep and that, I happened to catch a little feature on the WWE Network about your son, and it was a kind of "Where Are They Now?" Feature talking about what Ted Jr. is doing now, and I thought that was a really, really a cool little piece for them to do. I mean, him actually talking about leaving and wanting to be with his newborn son and what he's doing now, and I thought they did a really good job on that.
Yeah, I was really happy with that as well. And again, and I'm glad that they did that. Because a lot of people wondered where he went. It's like. Because he had it, man. He was good. I mean, I remember Vince looked at me one day and said, "You should be very proud, Ted." He says, "Because your son has an unbelievable future ahead of him." And of course, well, again, I told him before he started. I said, "Look, this is going to be great, but once you get married and you have a child and you realize that to be a star in this business is going to require so much of your time, it's not going to be fair to your family." And that's what happened. He figured that out. And he said, irregardless of what kind of money I could make and what have you, he said if I pursue this, I'll end up not having a family. And I said no. And of course, a lot of that's it's different. I mean, it's a lot better there now than it was when I was there. There was no accountability. Now they have had for a long time state-of-the-art drug testing policy, The guys work a 4-day week and they go home for 3. But now that's most of the guys. But if you're a star, if you're,
John
if you're
Cena.
John Cena
Yeah.
or one of those guys, you're considered one of the flag bearers of the company. So there's always going to be other stuff that they want you to do, and it just comes along with it. So it's the nature of the beast.
He made that. Yeah, he made the choice. You mentioned earlier as well too that you're going to come up here for the speaking tour right after WrestleMania. So are you going to be down there for the Hall of Fame then?
I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there for the whole weekend.
Oh, really? For the whole weekend? And are you doing anything? Are you doing anything in particular, or?
Well, no. I mean, they fly us in. They fly us in on Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday. I mean, obviously, I think Friday's the Hall of Fame, but during the day they have the fan access where they have different guys set at different times to go and sign autographs and take pictures with the fans, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and of course then the show's on Sunday, and then they're on Monday, but it's a very busy weekend.
When you're in situations like that, does some of the younger talent ever come up to you and ask for your advice? Because I'm sure in a lot of their eyes, I mean, you were one of those guys that probably inspired them to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people, throughout my, since I've retired, I've done that. I've gone down to Orlando as a guest, I guess, teacher, for like a week, but most of that was, talk. Most of that was, sharing with them, my views and my, the psychology of what we do,
right,
and things like that. But yeah, I get asked quite often for advice, and I freely give it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to teach them how to do some of those crazy bumps you used to do, man. I was watching your match with Savage from WrestleMania 4, the culmination of the tournament, and some of those bumps that you used to do, where you'd land on your head and spin right around, and I could never believe how you never broke your neck on some of those crazy bumps.
Yeah, I couldn't either. Yeah,
that was
funny.
That was amazing. Well, it's been so great talking to you, Ted. I have one more quick question, though, before we go, and I want to just get your thoughts on this because, the President of the United States now is probably someone that the $1 Million Man character would have really, really gotten along with quite well, and that's Donald Trump. And I just wanted to get some of your thoughts purely as an American, I guess, on the election of Donald Trump.
Well, again, number one, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, and when everybody was going, Donald Trump, and of course it's like he's not a polished speaker, but here's the thing, I liken him to a good doctor with a poor bedside manner. The thing that I like about Trump is this, and in terms of the political thing, and number one, we have too many career politicians. I mean, I really believe in term limits. Like, if you're elected to whether you're a senator or whatever you are, that you should have a certain amount of time, and then that's it. Time's up. You can't just keep. You can't make it a career, because all of those officials are elected to serve the people and not serve their own interest. And so when Trump said, "I want to drain the swamp," I couldn't agree with him more. I mean, and most Americans feel that way. It's like, we're tired of being promised all these things and nothing ever happens.
Right.
And so the thing I admire about him was, number one, he's not a politician, so you can't buy him. You can't buy him because he doesn't need the money. So there's no special interest group that he's going to do favors for. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you pad my pocket and I'll pad yours. Well, he doesn't need any of that. As a matter of fact, the salary of the president is like, I think it's $450,000, and he said, "I'm not taking it. I don't need it."
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, the guy's 71 years old. he doesn't need any of this. I mean, he could go off and just relax the rest of his life, and I believe that he really is doing it for the sake of the country, and he's listening to the people by and large. Those are the things I like. I mean, people say, well, he said this and he said that. I said, you know what? I said, I wrote I did a lot of, I said, we're not electing a preacher. We're electing somebody to run the country, and I said, there's a lot of things that I said that I'm glad nobody ever heard. And I said, but I did a lot of bad things. I even wrote a book about it, about my life. I said, but number one, it never affected my job performance, and I changed. I came to a place of recognition. I tell guys this all the time. There's no harm. I mean, there's no shame in failing, because we're human. We're all going to fail. We're all going to blow it somewhere, sometime. What's the shame is if you don't get back up, learn a lesson from the experience and carry on.
Right.
And so the other thing that I watch people, and I met Donald Trump at WrestleMania 4, and I've never seen him again. I mean, I've seen him, but I've never been in personal contact with Donald Trump again.
Right.
Here's a guy that's been married 2 or 3 times. He's got children by each of these wives. But if you watch him around, his children absolutely adore him, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, these are rich kids, but understand that they're not rich kids with a silver spoon. He made them work. I mean, he made them, work to get where they're at now. And I was listening to one of his sons speak, and I said, oh my gosh, this guy, I mean, he's a much better speaker than his dad. I can't remember which one it was, but anyway, those are the things. I'm a conservative. I'm not a liberal. That's just who I am. And the other thing is, you know what? If we're going to get anything done in the United States or Canada, for that matter, at some point you have to come together.
Yes.
And in spite of your beliefs, it's like, it's okay. You believe so strongly this way, and I believe so strongly this other way. But let's come together and let's find some common ground,
right?
And let's get something done. And I think that's what he wants to do. It's not like it's my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and that's that's the way it's been. The last 8 years in the United States. It's just been there's been no compromise.
Right.
And so anyway, that's just me personally. And again, I've got a lot of, I guess I wouldn't even call myself a Republican. I would call myself, a Christian conservative.
Right.
And of course I have a lot of liberal friends, and we can agree to disagree. And we have our, oh my gosh, Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette and I go round and round and round. The bottom line is we both seem to want the same things. We
right.
just think we have opposite ways of thinking there. We can get there.
Right, right.
So, but anyway, you know what? And here's the thing. I wish him luck. It's like I wasn't a big fan of Barack Obama. I wasn't a fan at all. But I prayed for the guy every day.
Right.
I wanted him to do good, and I'm going to pray for Donald Trump just like I did every president that I've that's been our president since I was able to understand what was going on.
Right, right. Well, Ted, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. Can't wait to see you up here in Ontario for the $1 Million Tour. It starts Friday, April the 7th at the Showtime Comedy and Entertainment Bar in St. Catharines. We've got Saturday, April the 8th at the Goofy Newfie Pub and Grill in Fergus, Ontario. Sunday, April the 9th at Absolute Comedy right here in Toronto. Monday, April the 10th at the Banquet Center in Belleville, Ontario. Tuesday, April the 11th in Kingston at Absolute Comedy. Wednesday, April the 12th at Comedy Works Montreal, in Montreal, obviously. Thursday, April the 13th in Brockville. And Friday, April the 14th in Hamilton at Club Absinthe. Ted, this is going to be amazing. The $1 Million Man on tour.
Hey, well, yeah, we're going to have some fun. And that's what I said. It's like, hey, come out. So like everybody's got a price, but you know what? If I think to come and hear the $1 Million Man tell stories from the road is priceless.
And I would totally agree with that. Thanks again.
And you will be bought.
That's it. Oh, and one more thing before we go. Can I have a really good off the top $1 Million Man cackle? Because I used to love when you do that crazy laugh.
Well, I'll end this the way I always end. Everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.